morning. Wow. Nice turnout. So this morning we're going to be discussing the link between dietary sugar intake and the risk of all-cause dementia. Dementia is a growing public health concern, and recent research suggests that high sugar consumption may contribute to cognitive decline. Throughout this presentation, I'll share with you the research that I found, and we'll discuss how it implies that sugar affects the brain, the scientific evidence supporting this, and potential dietary interventions. Dietary interventions, good stuff. We all love that, right? Dementia affects millions worldwide, probably people that you know for sure, particularly in our subset of age here. It poses a growing health burden. Lifestyles in particular, diet, play a key role in brain health. Dementia being a progressive neurodegenerative disease means it starts not so bad and it gets really bad. While age and genetics do play a role, lifestyle factors such as diet, exercise, and cardiovascular health are what they call modifiable risk factors. So genetics is not modifiable, however, your lifestyle is modifiable. So we'll look at that a little later on. Over the last decade, research has shown that high sugar consumption may contribute to brain aging and neurodegeneration. Ooh, ugly words. So there's three or four different types, or classified in different types. Alzheimer's disease is about 60 to 70% of cases. Vascular dementia, the remaining percentages, right, attributed that way, caused by reduced blood flow to the brain. Lewy body dementia associated with abnormal protein deposits. Frontal temporal dementia affecting personality and language. And then we talk about risk factors, right? The non-modifiable risk factors are going to be your age, genetics. We'll talk about the APOE4 gene. And then we'll look at modifiable risk factors. Again, it's going to be diet, exercise, cardiovascular health, maintaining your blood sugar and not getting into diabetes. So the APOE4 gene, that's a lot, that's a mouthful. It's an apolipoprotein E gene, which provides instructions for making a protein involved in lipid metabolism and cholesterol transport in the body, including the brain. It's one of the three major variants of the APOE. It comes in 2 also and 1, and it is the strongest known genetic risk factor for late onset Alzheimer's disease. It plays a critical role in how cholesterol and other lipids are transported in the blood, supports neuronal repair and plasticity in the brain, and clearing of amyloid beta plaques, which are also associated with Alzheimer's. Carrying the APOE4 allele is associated with a higher risk, but it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed that you're going to have Alzheimer's. The mechanism behind this increases the risks for the amyloid beta clearance, increased neuroinflammation, blood-brain barrier disruption, and mitochondrial dysfunction, and insulin resistance. I know that's a lot, this is all scientific, but these are things that are non-modifiable that could lend itself to Alzheimer's. If you tack on the environmental stuff on top of that, then you're even at a higher risk. Like I said, carrying this gene is not a guarantee that you're gonna have or express Alzheimer's. Things that people that carry the gene can do are gonna go right back to healthy diet, regular exercise, cognitive engagement, quality sleep, believe it or not, because when we sleep at night, it clears a lot of these things, these misfolded proteins out of the brain, and if you're not getting adequate sleep, that's a component. So we looked at the types of dementias. We're going to look at types of sugars. So not all sugars are the same. I'm sure you've heard that before. Glucose, fructose, and lactose have different metabolic effects on the body and the brain. Glucose is essential for brain function, but excessive intake leads to insulin resistance. Fructose, found in fruit, and high fructose corn syrup is metabolized in the liver. It's more likely to contribute to fat accumulation, inflammation, and cognitive decline when consumed in excess. And lactose is a natural sugar found in dairy. So that's the natural occurring sugar that's in all dairy. Lactose intolerance is from someone that doesn't have the lactase enzyme to be able to break down those sugars. So that's where your lactose intolerance comes from. The overview of these types of sugars. Natural sugars, obviously found in fruits, vegetables, and dairy, are in their whole component, right? They're the way nature made them. Processed sugars are usually refined, taken out of, and then set aside, so it doesn't have all the other components to it. So naturally, it's going to affect the body differently. Added sugars found in processed foods, sodas, and sweets could be table sugar, it could be high fructose corn syrup, it could be a litany of things because there's 101 different names for sugar. So they can hide that in the labeling. High sugar diets are common in sweetened beverages, which we'll look at in a little while. Processed foods, fast foods, and ultra-processed foods. The risks related to these are obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cognitive decline. So glucose versus fructose. These are both monosaccharides, meaning they're single structure. Table sugar is actually not fructose, it's sucrose. And sucrose is a disaccharide, and it's these two put together. So sucrose, table sugar, is a disaccharide, and it's a combination of a glucose molecule and a fructose molecule. So we're going to look at ways that they're different. So where are they processed? Glucose can be metabolized by every cell in the body. When consumed, about 80% is taken into the muscles, the brain, and other tissues, with only about 20% processed in the liver. Fructose, on the other hand, almost 100% of fructose metabolism happens in the liver, meaning it places a disproportionate burden on this organ compared to glucose. Insulin response and blood sugar impact. Glucose triggers an insulin response, helping shuttle into the cells the energy to be stored as glycogen in the muscle and the liver, and this makes it a regulated energy source. Fructose does not stimulate insulin resistance, which at first might sound good, but it also means that fructose consumption doesn't trigger satiety signals, meaning doesn't make you feel full, a signal to stop eating because I'm full. So it doesn't do that, leading to overeating and excess caloric intake. Conversion to fat, so lipogenesis and fatty liver risk. Glucose, if excess is consumed, it's stored as glycogen in the muscles and in the liver, with only a small amount being converted to fat. Fructose, since the liver is the primary source of metabolism, much of it is converted into fat or triglycerides, leading to fatty liver disease, increased visceral fat. If you were in my 30-day challenge, I think we all know what visceral fat is. Probably had some of that, and insulin resistance. So we're just going through all the differences, right, of glucose and fructose. You might not have known this one. Uric acid and inflammation. Glucose has minimal impact on uric acid levels. Fructose, on the other hand, rapid fructose metabolism produces excess uric acid, which can contribute to gout, kidney disease, hypertension, and oxidative stress, all of which increase inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. Fructose is looking pretty bad, isn't it? Yeah. So when you see on that label high fructose corn syrup, that's what we're talking about here. Hunger and satiety hormones. We touched that just a bit, but your body has an internal way of saying from the belly to the brain, hey, I'm full, stop eating. You probably heard a lot about GLP-1s and things like this. These mimic some of that, but you have your natural ones inside your body, but they can be hijacked. So glucose increases leptin, which means you do feel full, and suppresses ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, helping regulate appetite. Fructose, on the other hand, does not significantly increase leptin or suppress ghrelin, meaning it can lead to increased hunger and overeating, driving obesity. Man, fructose, you're bad stuff. Impact on glucose is the brain's preferred fuel and supports cognitive function when consumed in balanced amounts. Fructose, on the other hand, in excess, has been shown to impair brain function, learning, and memory, and may be a contributing factor to Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline by increasing inflammation and insulin resistance in the brain. So why is fructose more problematic? Fructose is more lipogenic, means fat producing, right? Because it's processed in the liver. It bypasses insulin regulation, leading to higher hunger and increased caloric intake. It raises uric acid and inflammation, which contributes to chronic disease. And it can promote fatty liver disease, obesity, and metabolic syndrome when consumed in excess. Sounds pretty good, huh? Fructose isn't inherently bad, it's the dose and the source that matter. Small amounts from whole fruits, because fruit has fructose in it, but again, it's in its nature capsule, right? That's the way nature made it. It's got all the other components, the fiber and these types of things that slow the absorption and slow down some of the impact. However, high amounts from high fructose corn syrup, fruit juices, which we'll also look at in a minute, and processed foods overwhelm the liver and lead to metabolic dysfunction. Mechanism, insulin resistance, and dementia. Insulin regulates brain function, as we talked about. It's the primary fuel source for the brain. High sugar diets lead to insulin resistance, including reducing glucose uptake by the neurons. So the brain doesn't have a place to store this. Like in your body, it would be stored as fat. In the brain, it actually gets stored as these plaques that it lays down in between the neurons. Alzheimer's disease is sometimes called type 3 diabetes because of this connection right here to insulin resistance in the brain. Leads to amyloid beta accumulation, contributing to cognitive decline. So has anyone in here heard of amyloid plaques? Okay, very good. So high sugar intake has been linked to the formation of amyloid beta plaques, a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. This connection is particularly evident in individuals with diabetes who exhibit a higher prevalence and severity of amyloid beta pathology. Elevated blood glucose levels can increase brain excitability and amyloid beta release, offering a mechanistic link between type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's disease. Studies have shown that hyperglycemia, that's high blood sugar, can lead to increased amyloid beta production and plaque formation in the brain. So what happens over time, the blood sugar elevates when you eat something. Insulin comes in and tells that energy where to go. If you become insulin resistant, your insulin no longer can transport and tell the energy where to go. You continue to have high elevated blood sugar levels, which is destructive to the vessels. It's destructive to your whole system, anywhere that circulates. So when you get damage to your vessels, the body puts cholesterol down, surprisingly enough, which is kind of an interesting, as a Band-Aid to repair. And we could go on to that a little bit more in a minute. Moreover, diets high in saturated fats and sugars can reduce the levels of apoprotein E, which is something you want that. So diets high in fat and sugar can reduce the levels of that, and this protein actually helps to clear the plaques, the amyloid beta plaques. So you're kind of getting it on both sides, right? The diet is laying them down, and it's also suppressing something that helps to clear them out naturally. Does that make sense? So it's a twofer. Reduced ApoE levels may result in increased free amyloid beta, promoting plaque formation. These findings suggest that excess sugar consumption may contribute to Alzheimer's disease by promoting amyloid beta plaque formations involving hypoglycemia-induced neuronal activity. That's a lot, it's a mouthful. Insulin resistance and impaired amyloid beta clearance. So kind of just a recap of how sugar affects the brain. High chronic sugar intake can raise insulin resistance, affecting memory. Produces oxidative stress and neuroinflammation, vascular dysfunction, leading to reduced blood flow to the brain. That's not good. Amyloid betas, TAU accumulation linked to Alzheimer's. Maybe we'll never look at that donut the same. conclusion on that is that excessive sugar consumption drives a cycle of oxidative stress, inflammation, insulin resistance, and promotes amyloid beta plaque accumulation. This process contributes to neurodegeneration, increasing the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Reducing sugar intake, one of the modifiable factors that you have absolute control over, and maintaining stable blood glucose levels, support brain health, taking in enough antioxidants, and having a healthy diet may prevent or slow down plaque formation. And there was an interesting study. I was actually listening to a podcast this morning. The doctor's name is Kate Troops et al. There's a bunch of other ones, but they did a study. It's a pretty small study, but it's 25 people. But what they did was took an individualized approach to treating the condition. So instead of looking at it's Alzheimer's, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, it's who is the person that has the disease and what can we find out about them, and then how can we treat that. So it was a personalized protocol, if you will, for each person in there instead of just one protocol for everybody. Does that make sense? So it was very individualized because something that raises your blood sugar may not raise my blood sugar. And in fact, this doctor was talking and he was saying that he wore a constant glucose monitor to do some research on himself, and he found that cashews raised his blood sugar. So everyone, my point in that is everyone is different. So it's hard to treat in a box all the same. So they took this study, these 25 individuals, individualized the treatment plan for all of them, and their results were pretty fascinating. I want to say there is a drug that they have said slows down the progression of Alzheimer's. Don't quote me because I don't know if it's available or not, but it's only by like a third. And it doesn't stop it, it says it slows it down. So what they found was that not only did it stop the progression, they had a reversal of the condition, meaning they got better. He even had some of his patients that went back to work, went back to managing their own finances. It's pretty fascinating. This study will be available on the portal. It's something you should definitely read. This doctor, his last name is really weird. I'll put it on there too, but he's written several books. And the books are fascinating. One of them is called Wheat Brain, but some of the new research that's coming out is pretty, here it is, they're total improved. So 21 out of the 25s, 84% had improvement. That's significant. So again, I would definitely take a look at this study. It's very interesting, the way they're taking an out-of-the-box approach to medicine, and they should, because we are very individualized. We're all very different, even though we have similarities. I want to find that other paper. I'm sorry. I'll put the podcast on there too. This is the doctor that he was part of this research. He's on the podcast being interviewed. So I'll put that on the portal. So clinical trials and dietary interventions. There's a lot of stuff out there. The majority of the research tends to lend itself to Mediterranean style diets, high healthy fat diets, which makes sense if you consider the brain as 85% cholesterol. The myelin sheaths, part of the neurons, that sheath is made out of fats. So you want a high fat diet, healthy fat diet. So ketogenic diets, these are ones that emphasize extremely low to no sugar intake, almost like a carnivore style diet. And it was interesting, this is off the notes here, but there was another doctor that was talking, and he was saying that our Paleolithic past, we would have only experienced fructose seasonally because it's in fruit, right? And seasonally it would be right before the winter. And when we would eat that, it would signal the body to store fat to get ready for the winter. Well, we're constantly eating fructose, so we're constantly storing for a winter that isn't coming. Just thought that was pretty interesting. So we kind of sabotaged our internal mechanisms that were meant to protect us and to keep us alive through a winter, but we don't have that. So I think understanding these mechanisms and educating yourself is definitely the first step in Prevention, again, we talked about in the 30-day challenge, awareness. Educate yourself. Don't go with the mainstream advertisers try to sell you and tell you. And know that things that have heart healthy or brain healthy labeled on them usually are the ones that are not. You don't see blueberries with the label on it that says heart healthy. You don't see avocados with the label on it heart healthy. What you see are boxed cereals, Pop-Tarts, processed foods that say good for your heart, can reduce cholesterol. When it's got a health claim and it's screaming really loud at you, it's probably false. Paid for by Big Food or Big Pharma. That's my soapbox. All right, I got one more thing. Here it is. Dr. David Perlmutter. Now that's a name. Perlmutter, a neurologist and known author for his work on brain health and nutrition. He's highly critical of high fructose corn syrup, and he argues that high fructose corn syrup contributes to various health issues. This is labeled on your labels if you take a look. Particularly metabolic disorder, obesity, and neurodegenerative conditions. He links excessive fructose consumption to insulin resistance, inflammation, all those things we talked about, and an increased risk of type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's. He emphasizes that fructose, especially from processed sources, like high fructose corn syrup, can overwhelm the liver, leading to fat accumulation, right? Fatty liver disease and disruptions in blood sugar regulation. He advises reducing or eliminating high fructose corn syrup from the diet in favor of whole, natural foods that do support brain and overall health. Conclusions and takeaways. Sugar is bad. Bad. Sugar's bad. Excessive sugar intake contributes to dementia risk. I think we can all agree to that. The research is very loud in that arena. Mechanisms include insulin resistance, inflammation, and vascular damage. Reducing sugar intake, it says may, I would say could, would, will, I want to say will, help prevent cognitive decline. Obviously, more long-term studies are needed. I think in the realm of medicine and the research that's been done, a lot of the research that I've come across and things that I see are funded by someone with an interest in their product, right? So there's a lot of conflicts of interest. Research is expensive, and the people that have the money to pay for this stuff know the result they want to have already. And so good research is hard to find because of the process. And there's no money to be made from it. Telling someone to go that they're the bearer of their own destiny, that they can go and eat healthy and drink water and get sunshine and exercise doesn't make any money. But if I can diagnose a chronic condition, then I have a client for life. And that means big money. So that's all of that. I'm going to show you a few common items from the table over here. First, a quick fun fact. This bag right here is 10 pounds of sugar. Any guesses on how much sugar the average American eats in a year? 60. 60 pounds of sugar. This is one 10-pound bag. I have another one over there. I was going to buy 6, but it seemed ridiculous. I was at the grocery store with all these items in my cart and ran into my neighbor, and they were like, I said, it's not mine, I swear. 60 pounds of sugar, and that's average. So there's people that consume more. Obviously, there's people that consume less, but that's 5 pounds of sugar in a year. That's a lot of sugar. It's hidden in a lot of places you might not expect. And then we have to look at portion size and things like that, right? So we'll just start here and I'll work my way over. This is your regular basic tomato ketchup. This little cup is here because this is what a serving size is. It's a tablespoon. Just your normal average tablespoon. Has anybody ever used just a tablespoon of ketchup? So 1 tablespoon of ketchup has 4 grams of sugar, and I put them in here in teaspoons. That's 1.2 teaspoons of sugar per tablespoon. So if I took this 1.2 teaspoons of sugar and put it into that tablespoon, and then multiply that by 6 servings, that's a lot of sugar just right there in your ketchup. Of course, and then we're probably dipping French fries that have been fried in seed oil in there, but that's a whole nother thing, right? This, and I think it's high fructose corn syrup. I'm going to double check that, but yes, high fructose corn syrup right here. So it's not even table sugar, it's high fructose corn syrup. They use that because it's cheaper to make. And corn is in abundance, right? Subsidized by the government. I gotta stop. This is no sugar added. So only the sugar that's naturally occurring in the tomato is in here. So this is less than 1 gram of sugar per serving. Just by making that simple switch right there.
Does the market have that?
Well, that's another question. I had someone say the other day, it was about yogurt. Oh yeah, I love to put dried fruit on top of my yogurt. So this is a bag of dried cherries, real fruit. The serving size is 1/4 cup, not much, right? 1/4 cup. And this has 28 grams of sugar, 11 of which are added sugar. So 28's already in the fruit. They added 11 more grams of sugar. So what does that look like? That's 28 grams of sugar. Remember, in 1/4 cup. Right, we got to put it into context of the size of the portion. 6.9 teaspoons of sugar. You can come up here afterwards and look at these, and I can tell you right now, if I handed this to anybody in this room, there's no way you would eat all this sugar. But if you eat 1/4 cup of that, this is what you just got. If you eat 2 1/4 cups of that, you can double that. Granola bars. Them almost hate these as much as I hate oatmeal. Granola. Well, it's healthy, right? It's got the health halo, granola. Everybody's, healthy and eating granola. Honey and Oats crunchy granola bars. Serving size is 1 package, which has 2 little thin skinny bars in it. Oh, let's see. Cane syrup, sugar, fruit concentrate. They just can't get enough sugar in this thing. They gotta put it in here in all these different ways. This is 13 grams of sugar, 1 serving, all of which is added sugar. Now, we didn't go into the grams of carbohydrates because this is made with a grain. It's a grain, right? Rolled oats. They have components. They're sugar molecules that your body breaks down into sugar anyway. So we've got 30 grams of carbohydrate on top of the sugar. So what does that look like? 13 grams of sugar is 3.15 teaspoons of sugar. Fruit juice. It's healthy, right? Fruit juice. Oh, particularly the cranberry, right? It's good for your kidneys, right? That's what I've heard. Cranberry juice, right? Good for the kidneys. They do sell this in the market. I didn't get that one from there, but this did come from there. This has, it's 25% cranberry juice. So what's the rest of it? Yeah, that's a good bet. Cranberry juice, cane sugar, natural flavors. Wonder what that is. They don't say. This has 45 grams of sugar. That is 10.91 teaspoons of sugar. Anybody want to eat this? That is this cranberry juice right here. That's the big sell for the day. That's the worst one up here. And it's not even that much juice, right? Let's see if sweet tea is any better. Probably not. But I had to do this because we're in Texas, right? You guys like your sweet tea? I don't either, but some people do. This is 32 grams of sugar. And it's all added sugar, and it comes from, at least they actually use sugar. Just real table sugar. That's 32 grams, that's 7.76 teaspoons of sugar. Still a lot. We'll see how orange juice compares. Because it's healthy, right? Orange juice. No added sugar. It's gotta be healthy. It's got no added sugar. Let's take a look. Probably need better contacts. This has 33 grams of sugar. That is 8 teaspoons of sugar. The jar is almost full. I thought I was going to run out of room on that one. So these are some pretty hard hitters right here. So just by consuming water, black coffee, not drinking beverages that are sugar laden, you can make some pretty big changes in your dietary intake just by these right here. Oatmeal. How did you get over here? Let's see. They sell these in the market? Probably. Instant oats with apples and cinnamon. 100% whole oats. Whole oats are better, right? Healthy. 11 grams of sugar. And then we get back to it's a grain, it's got 36 grams of carbohydrate. So the sugar is labeled, however, there are other things that your body is going to turn into sugar upon ingestion. So that's a whammy. Fruit. These cute little fruit containers, right? Because I'm going to put that on top of my yogurt. Peaches in light syrup. And they say right here, no high fructose corn syrup. We got some natural flavoring. 17 grams of sugar. And that's one serving. "17 grams of sugar." That's the equivalent of 4.12 teaspoons of sugar. If you took those 4.1 teaspoons of sugar and put it in this container, yeah. Pasta sauce. I don't know why they add all the sugar, because tomatoes are sweet naturally. And there's certainly better brands you could buy. I didn't mean to pick on Prego, but this is the serving size. Serving size is a half cup. Whoever just eats a half cup of sauce, right? My husband's Italian. He would be like, no. 12 grams of carbohydrates, 9 grams of sugar, 4 of which are added sugar. So if this was made without added sugar, it would be the sugar from the tomato. It would be half of what it is. So a serving size of that is 2.18 grams of sugar. So for every half cup, 2.18 grams of sugar. So kind of hidden, right? You wouldn't think of it. Oops. Yoplait. And this is the yogurt that I'm going to put the fruit on top of. Hang on. Let me get that sugar. Yoplait, 19 grams of sugar in this little bitty container right here. And I think I'm going to put some dried cherries on there and add another 28 grams of sugar. And the volume of what I've consumed is this plus this little cup. And I have taken in 40 grams of sugar. Pretty surprising, right? I didn't do alternatives for everything. I did the ketchup. Obviously, the alternative for these juices is water, or some form of water. Fage. This is just a plain Greek yogurt. Because it is a dairy product, it's going to have some natural occurring sugars. We talked about lactose, right? It's always better to get the full fat version, because when they take something out, they always put something else in. The full fat version is going to help with the satiety, right? It's going to help me to feel full. This has 5 grams of sugar, all naturally occurring, mixed with protein, which slows the absorption rate in its way that nature intended it to be, whole and complete. So that's 1.2 teaspoons. That's the lowest one out here. And again, that sugar is processed a little differently because of what it's in, proteins and fats. Cheerios. Cheerios. Well, it's heart healthy, right? I know it says it on here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Heart healthy. Honey Nut Cheerios, 1 serving, 17 grams of sugar. That's this little container, which It's kind of deceptive because I can see clearly that this is not full. Shrinkflation and all that. It's about to right here. So 4.12 teaspoons of sugar in your Honey Nut Cheerios. And they're from an oat, so what else do they have? Carbohydrates that your body turns into. I think you guys are getting that. So that's just a really fun kind of thing I thought I wanted to do to show you. I'll take the lids off these if you want to come up, if anybody just needs a dose of sugar this morning.
Would you talk about things like stevia?
So I think artificial sweeteners or sweetened alternatives, if you will, could be a whole nother presentation. Monk fruit, from my research and what I've seen, is going to be your best bet because it's not 0 calories, it has calories, but it has a low glycemic index and a low glycemic load, meaning it doesn't affect insulin and blood sugar, and it adds sweetness. Stevia can be a good alternative if it's 100% stevia. Stevia in the wild is a leaf. How does it turn into a white powder? Processing. And if you look on the back of the package, what I have found more times than not, it's not just stevia. It has other things added to it. So maybe a health food store, it's interesting. There's a health food section in the store. What does that say about the rest of the store? All right. But you have to look. You have to look at the ingredients. If you can get raw stevia, and I even saw one that says stevia in the raw, but when you flip it over, it's definitely not. And then the other thing is with the non-caloric ones, artificial sweeteners that are in your sodas and all these other beverages, there's tons of research that doesn't just suggest it, it says that it adds to weight gain, adds to obesity, and has the same insulin response as drinking sugar, except for now you've taken in no calories and it kind of hard unwires the brain because the brain's getting geared up. As soon as you put food in your mouth, your tongue is a beautiful receptor. It says, hey, get ready. And you get that insulin response anyway. So, you're welcome.
The study where you had 25 patients, what did he feed those people that made them so healthy?
Well, first of all, remember they took a individual approach. So each person was on their own personalized protocol, right? And I'll make that available to you. You should read it. It's a really good article. It really gives some promise to things in the future, and ways to deal with these things that the body can kind of heal itself if it's getting all the raw materials that it needs, as opposed to pharmaceuticals, which they are what they are, but they don't heal anybody. They treat symptoms. So the more things you can do holistically, which it's going to be similar things, I'm sure. Yeah, similar, right? Because these clients all wore a constant glucose monitor, so they knew individually which foods spiked their blood sugar and which ones didn't. So instead of saying this is the diet everybody's going to eat and let's see how everybody does, it was individualized. Yeah. Yes?
What is an acceptable amount of sugar?
Mmm.
You're talking about get away from high. What's high? What? But you can't get away from it completely.
We could. You may not want to, but you could. It would be difficult.
What would you eat?
Meat, eggs, animal products, vegetables. Yeah. Anything that nature makes, pretty much, right?
Like your fruit and everything has.
It does.
Eating natural fruit, not processed,
But
what's an acceptable number?
well, fruit shouldn't be the primary component of your diet. It should be some, right? And in particular, we want fruits that are high in fiber. Blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, all your berries are great. There are fruits, there's the glycemic index, right? How fast does the blood sugar rise when you eat X compared to table sugar or white bread? I think it's the American Diabetics, I don't know, it's one of those associations. What they say is acceptable is 20 grams of sugar a day. Which if, I can probably go right back over to the table and show you 20 grams of sugar in one product. So, there are no essential carbohydrates, and that includes sugar. Your brain let's just say it was a perfect scenario and you could put somebody in a little box and they're not in this environment that we live in and they ate like a caveman, for lack of a better term. You would see all these diseases start to deteriorate. You would see the blood sugar stable. You wouldn't see all these things that we're having in current time. But we don't live in a bubble, so it makes it complicated. So education on where the sugar is your first step and first defense against protecting yourself. Because it's buyer beware. You do have to protect yourself. I don't think anybody thinks the government's looking out for their health, right? Questions? Somebody's got a question. There we go. I don't know if I can come all the way back there. Hang on. Let's do this. Testing, testing. This one doesn't squeal back there. This one does.
Thanks. Thank you for the words, especially about the fructose. This is a special niche that I speak to, and that is that the brain does require glucose circulating for energy. It requires glucose as much as it requires oxygen. And I have been involved in cases of death. Example, a patient who probably with dementia took insulin and then took another dose and forgot and took another dose. But there's similar things out there. And the comment would be, if you are diabetic, particularly and on treatment, particularly on insulin, work with your physician, consider a glucose watch, do something to be willing to identify hypoglycemia so you know the symptoms if it's going to occur, and be willing to adjust to not do it. And the point would be, if you see the light and you decide, and you're under treatment, under insulin treatment, and you decide to modify your diet extensively, as we probably should, you need to be aware of that and work with your physician to identify it and treat it if it occurs.
Thank you. It brings up an interesting point, which I've mentioned too, the wearables, they call them, all the kids are calling them, like a constant glucose monitor. I'm not saying go out and buy one, but there are ways that we can get a lot of information nowadays with something that we wear, right? You got the glucose monitor, they've got watches that tell you about your sleep, because when we start looking at holistic health, diet is part of it, but there are a lot of other things, right? Sleep is one of them. You know, having good sleep hygiene, working on getting sleep, because that's when your body repairs itself, is when you sleep. So if you're not sleeping, you're at a disadvantage. So you got to figure out how you can get your health, your hygiene back in your sleep patterns. Yes.
Is this
I'm coming.
loud enough?
Can you come and grab this? Or can you pass that to him? Thank you. If I walk back there, it's going to be bad.
Is there a translation for has been shown as? The statements sometimes were shown as, does that mean research or does that mean modified research?
I don't understand modified research.
Okay. Some of the statements were, this has been shown to, or has been shown as produce more sugar or something. Is the statement as the has been shown as clause the same as research?
Yes, I mean, all this information that I provided you today, I have all my references and all the research. I think that's pretty much research lingo, because they're not going to give an absolute most times. But, you know, if you find enough research that points in the same direction, I would be one to say, hey, there must be something to this. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't profess to be a doctor in any way. I'm just providing you with information that you can use to educate yourself to better your health, longevity, and your time here on this lovely planet.
Do
Sir?
you care to comment on beer?
Oh. After party at Greg Loser's house. He's gonna provide the beer. Alcohol has a completely different effect. It's excess calories, it's empty calories, so it can contribute itself to weight gain. As far as what blood does or what beer does to blood sugar, I'm not exactly sure. But I do know that it slows down fat burning and that your body has to burn the calories from alcohol because it can't store them. So it prioritizes that over other things. And that may not have answered your question, but that's,
Well, there is also, there is zero alcohol beer, and there are fairly low alcohol beers too.
yeah. But that beer is also made from
Sure.
grain. So I highly say I enjoy red wine from time to time. You should too, if that's what you like. We got to live a life here, but it's these daily things that we do over and over and over and over again that add up. Just like I showed you, that breakfast right there with the cherries and the yogurt, if you have that every morning and you add it up, you're probably already to your 10 pounds of sugar for the year. You know? And those are the little things that have a big impact. Drinking a beer occasionally or going to, happy hour, that's not the bulk of what you're doing. It's those daily habits, those daily nutrition things that add up and really make a big difference. Yes?
What about soda and diet soda?
The question is about soda and diet soda, which I think we touched on briefly. That orange juice that I showed you, if you took the equivalent amount of regular soda, it's the same amount of sugar, 33 to 38 grams of sugar. Now, if you take the sugar out and you put artificial sweetener in there, sucralose or whatever it is they're using, it still creates an insulin response in the body based on the research out there. So people that were drinking diet soda versus people that were drinking soda, and they both still gained weight. So, anybody else? Burning desires, last questions? Yes? Milk. Milk is good for you, and milk has lactose in it, which is sugar.
Diet as opposed to whole milk.
For me, for myself, I always like it the way nature made it. So when you take the fat out, they put something else in. So what are they putting in? The lactose is going to be there unless you have lactose-free milk, and then they remove that sugar from it. Almond milk, we got to look at what's in it. The unsweetened almond milk, most people don't like that. They're not going to drink that. It doesn't have any fullness to it. It doesn't have any flavor. So if you're talking sweetened oat or sweetened almond milk, we're getting back to added sugar, added sugar, added sugar. It'd be better to drink whole milk, which has protein in it, right? The way nature intended, so all the components are there together. Heavy cream. Yeah. All right, well, I thank you all for being here.